Okay, let's get started. Hello and welcome. My name is Stephen Lynch. I'm part of the consulting team at Advisory.Works, and I returned home to live in New Zealand in 2020 after spending 12 years living and working in North America. And when I was overseas, I used to manage a global team of more than 50 strategy consultants. And I've personally worked with hundreds of companies in the USA, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, helping them with strategic planning, business coaching, and management training. And today on the webinar, I've got my colleague with me, Logan Wedgwood, who's the CEO of Advisory.Works. He'll be monitoring the chat. And Karina Rore, the operations manager and events manager at Advisory.Works. She'll also be monitoring the Zoom chat to answer any questions you might have during the webinar. And at the conclusion of the presentation, Logan, Karina, and I will all stay on for 10 to 15 minutes or so to answer any questions you may have in the chat channel. And as you can see today, the title of the webinar is What Strategy Is and Isn't. And the team at Advisory.Works, we've facilitated thousands of strategic planning sessions over the years, and we've seen the good, the bad, and the downright ugly of strategic planning. And today I want to share with you a few lessons about what works, what does not work, to save you from making mistakes and to help you to succeed faster. Because unfortunately, a lot of strategic planning is done very poorly. And I'm going to start with a quote from Professor Roger Martin from the University of Toronto. Now, he's been named the world's #1 management thinker of the modern era, and he consults to companies like Ford, Lego, Procter & Gamble. And in terms of his influence on strategic thinking, I put Roger Martin in a similar category to Peter Drucker, Michael Porter, and Jim Collins. And he says, don't mistake non-choices for strategy. The essence of strategy is explicit, purposeful choice. And if the opposite is stupid, then it's not strategy. Now, you might be wondering, what does he mean by this quote? And I'll come back to the significance of this quote later on in the webinar. Because to start with, I want to talk about what is not strategy. I'm going to share my list of strategy traps that business leaders can fall victim to. Now, strategy traps, they're things that masquerade as strategy, where leaders think they have a strategy, but they haven't actually made any strategic choices at all. So let's look at some examples. I'll start with the long list of things to do. Now, when I lived in the USA, the general manager of a manufacturing company, he called me to ask if I could facilitate their next company strategic planning session. And I asked him, how have you done strategy in the past? And he said that he and the board of directors, they do their planning at the end of the year, they'd come up with a list of projects. And he showed me the current plan that had more than 20 projects on it, and they were assigned to various managers. But he said the problem was that they seldom got many of these projects completed, and the board of directors were getting frustrated. And he asked for my feedback, and I said, well, first of all, a long list of things to do is not strategy. It's just a list of things to do. And I see it all the time where everyone shares their good ideas about how to improve the business, but rather than make strategic choices, they just capture a list of projects and they call it a strategic plan. But this is not a strategic plan. It's just a list of things to do. And secondly, I told him, I said, you're trying to do far too much. There's lots of things you could do, but you can't do everything, because strategy is about making choices. Strategy is about making trade-offs. And the essence of strategy is choosing what you are not going to do. And I've got a quote of my own that I like to share with clients, and it's this: if you're not making any trade-offs, then you don't have a strategy. So take a look at this quote from Harvard. Now, this is from an article that came out last month, April 2022. And there's a trend in the USA to appoint a chief project officer to support the CEO to make sure your strategy gets implemented. But the problem is that companies still try to do far too much. And so less is more when it comes to strategy execution. Now, it's said that Steve Jobs used to take his managers on planning retreats to identify and rank the top 10 strategic moves to Apple. And people would argue furiously to get their ideas on this top 10 list. But then Steve Jobs would stand up and cross out the bottom 7 and say, we can only do 3. And this gesture made it really clear what Apple would and would not do. Now, Jim Collins, author of the best-selling management books like Good to Great and Built to Last, he said, if you've got more than 3 priorities, you don't have any priorities. So to summarize, a long list of things to do is not strategy. It's just a list of things to do. And there's lots of things you could do, but you can't do everything because strategy is about making choices. Strategy is about making trade-offs. And the essence of strategy is choosing what you are not going to do. And if you're not making any trade-offs, well, I'm sorry, you don't have a strategy. Another strategy trap, the magic vision. This is where the leader has a vision for the future. And don't get me wrong, we need leaders with vision. A vision can inspire people, like Reverend Martin Luther King with his I Have a Dream speech, or President John F. Kennedy with his Land on the Moon by the End of the Decade speech. And a vision for the future can inspire people. But vision by itself is not strategy. A vision is a dream about a better future. It tells you what you want to achieve, and that's fine, but strategy is about how you are going to achieve it. And this is related to the rainbows and unicorns trap. And yep, it's great to start with a compelling vision, but some leaders think they can manifest their vision just by the power of their belief alone. And they've read all the personal development books and they believe that you can manifest the future if you write down some big goals and put these goals on the wall where everyone can see them. And if you repeat your affirmations every morning and think positive thoughts and pray hard enough, but unless you can come up with a concrete strategy to achieve that vision, it's just rainbows and unicorns and magical thinking as far as your people are concerned. It's like the bravado trap, where the leader sets a great big goal, a big revenue target, but the target has no logical relationship with your current business model or industry trends, and your staff think, this is crazy. Some leaders think their job is just to set big revenue targets and delegate to their managers the job of figuring out what to do. But setting a big revenue target, that's not strategy. You see, many people, they confuse goal setting with strategy. And goal setting is important, but setting goals is not strategy. And many people want to grow their business. And yes, growth is important, but growth is an outcome. Setting goals for growth is not strategy. Setting goals for revenue, for profit, shareholder value, these things are outcomes. They are not strategy. Another common strategy trap is wanting to be better than our competitors. And yes, beating our competitors is important, but just wanting to be better than our competitors and taking them on head to head, feature for feature, service for service, that's not strategy. Some leaders think strategy is all about motivation, and they say we just need to improve our company culture and motivate our people to try harder. And they come up with training programs and incentive schemes, and they give rousing motivational speeches, and they urge their people to get after it. But it just reminds me of the trench warfare of World War I, where soldiers would be ordered by their officers to charge across the battlefield into a hail of machine gun fire. Now, these soldiers in World War I, they did not suffer from a lack of motivation or a lack of goals or a lack of training or a lack of positive thinking. What they suffered from was a lack of competent strategic leadership. So just motivating people to try harder, no, that's not strategy either. Another strategy trap is what I call strategy in a vacuum. It's like the planning team was on the International Space Station when they came up with the plan, because the plan seems miles away from the reality on the ground, miles away from what your people on the front lines are experiencing on the job day to day. These leaders, they get stuck in their glass offices. They've lost touch with the reality on the ground, and good luck trying to get your staff to buy into the plan. Now, other plans are just filled with fluff, and fluff is corporate gibberish masquerading as strategy. They're talking loud, but they're saying nothing. And these plans, they're full of buzzwords, slogans about sustainability and diversity and stakeholders and culture and purpose and innovation and collaboration. They've got a 5-year financial forecast. They've got some plans to invest some money and be good corporate citizens, but they take 200 words to say something that could have been said in a 20-word Twitter post. And it's not strategy, it's just fluff. It's just a whole lot of corporate gibberish masquerading as strategy. Another strategy trap is what I call fill in the blanks. And this often applies to smaller companies where they find a planning methodology that they like the Rockefeller habits or scaling up or EOS or traction or something to do with OKRs. And they use a DIY, a do-it-yourself approach, and they spend the day filling out the template with the team. And they come up with a document that looks like a plan. They've got some nice looking words in each box, but there's no real evidence of deep strategic thinking. Now, don't get me wrong, do it yourself, fill in a template. It's a good start, but it's not about the template. It's not about the tools. It's not even about the framework. It's about the quality of your thinking. It's about the quality of your debates. It's about the quality of your decision making. And yes, I'm biased, but this is where I say, regardless of what framework you go with, the quality of your coach matters more than the framework you use. Now, some companies, they just go for the good old spray and pray, the scattergun approach. They do a bit of everything, try to keep all the stakeholders happy, and just hope one of the darts that you throw hits a bullseye. It's a bit like the something for everyone trap, where you fail to make a clear choice as to who or what your target customer is and what your unique offering is. And you keep adding more and more features and more services, and your product and service becomes bloated and unfocused. Now, you can't please everybody, and you shouldn't even try. And marketing expert Seth Godin says, a product for everybody is a product for nobody. So don't try to be all things to all people. You can't be all things to all people, because strategy means saying yes to some things and no to other things. The essence of strategy is choosing what not to do. It also means saying no to some types of customers and their demands. And I'll talk more about this in a minute. Another strategy trap relates to the agile methodology, and perhaps you believe that you can't plan for the long term anymore, and you just need to be agile and plan in short sprints. And yes, we do need to be agile. We do need to be willing to adapt when we're trying something new or developing something new, and we're working to achieve product market fit with a new offering. But chopping and changing direction fast as a company is just a recipe for volatile performance and confused customers and confused, burnt out staff. So a winning strategy, it's not about being agile, it's about being smart agile. And the companies that succeed over multiple years and multiple product launches, they keep winning because they think carefully and they make good strategic choices. And then they move fast to implement and they iterate on their chosen strategic direction. And when people tell me that you can't plan for the long term anymore, I always smile and I share this quote from Jeff Bezos from Amazon.com. So if you are only planning, say, a year into the future, and you're competing against Amazon, who are planning 7 years into the future, they're going to eat your lunch. You're reacting today to a strategy that Amazon put into motion many years ago. You're looking down at your feet when you should be looking to the horizon. And the companies that really changed the world, the leaders that really changed the world, like Jeff Bezos and Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, they plan at least 3 to 5 years and even further into the future. Another strategy trap is the fast follow or the copycat, where you wait for someone to succeed and then just copy the same approach. It's where you chase the same trends as your competitors do. You're using the same tools and technologies, the same marketing approach. You've got the same features and benefits. You've got the same customers and same geographies. And you could take your website, you could swap out your logo, put your competitor logo on your website. No one could tell the difference. You look just the same as everybody else. But if your choices look the same as your competitors, you're not going to create a competitive advantage. It's just a recipe for commoditization and price competition. Now, in general, you need to learn faster than your competitors. You need to act first, not wait to see what they do and then react. Now, fighter pilots, they learned this lesson the hard way, and they call it the OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. You move proactively rather than waiting to see what the other pilot does. And to win, a fighter pilot must think and act faster than the enemy pilot can think and act. And if a pilot waits to see what the other pilot does and then reacts, they're more likely to lose the dogfight and get shot down. And it's the same in business. If you wait to see what your competitors do and then react, you are at a competitive disadvantage and you're more likely to lose. Some other strategy traps, the quality trap. Now, many people want to improve the quality of their products and services, and yes, improving quality is important, but quality improvement itself is not strategy. The efficiency trap. It's great to incorporate efficiency programs like Lean into your business to improve efficiency and reduce waste, but Lean is not strategy. Many business leaders, they confuse execution with strategy. And yes, we want to improve quality. Yes, we want to improve efficiency. Yes, we want to beat industry best practices, but this is execution. It's not strategy. Here's another quote from Harvard. The sentence at the bottom is key. Strategy is about doing things differently, not doing them better. Strategy is about creating a competitive advantage. And my final strategy trap, asking customers what they want. And some leaders, they say their strategy is to understand and solve customer needs, and they want to own the voice of the customer. And what's wrong with that, you might say? Now, don't get me wrong. Now, many businesses, they do not pay enough attention to customer needs. And yes, getting more customer feedback, conducting surveys can improve your current business. But you are confusing marketing with strategy. And some marketing companies say they are strategy companies, but this is a trap too. I mean, do they really help you to create a strategic plan for the future of your company? Or do they help you to market and sell your current products and services? Improving the way you market and sell your current products and services is good, but improving your current business is, at best, a short-term strategy. Take a look at this quote. It sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? Asking customers what they want can be an impediment to your long-term strategy. Asking customers what they want can prevent us from creating the future. This is a quote from W. Edwards Deming. He is the father of the quality movement. He helped create the manufacturing practices that enabled Japanese companies to become world leaders after World War II. You see, customers only know what they want now. And this is valuable to know, but don't pin your long-term strategy on what they tell you. We need to create the future. We need to take our customers by the hand and lead them into that future. Nobody asked for an iPhone. And the classic quote from Henry Ford. And this quote from Jeff Bezos from Amazon.com. Now, Amazon, they want to be the world's most customer-centric company where people can find anything they want to buy online. But even the world's most customer-centric company knows that you can't base your long-term strategy on asking customers what they want. So that's my list of common strategy traps, the things that masquerade as strategy, where leaders think they have a strategy, but they haven't actually made any strategic choices at all. So we've covered what is not strategy. Now we're going to talk about what strategy is. So what is strategy? Strategy is understanding how your industry is likely to play out and getting very clear on the key strategic moves your company needs to make in order to position yourself for future success. And your strategic moves should help you to establish a competitive advantage in your industry. And to be an effective strategic leader, you need to operate with dual vision. You need to have one eye looking through the microscope, improving what is, and one eye looking through the telescope, looking out to the future on the horizon, creating what will be. Now, many companies are pretty good at the first part, looking through the microscope, setting goals, tracking metrics to improve what is, to improve business as usual. But where many companies struggle is looking through the telescope, which is creating what will be, which means understanding how your industry is likely to play out and getting very clear on the key strategic moves your company needs to make to position yourself for future success. And in some cases, you may need to create a very different business from what you're doing now. And that is a paradox. But that's the key to effective strategic leadership. You need to improve what is, but you simultaneously need to create what you need to become in order to succeed in the future. And many companies struggle with this. They keep doing what made them successful in the past, trying to improve what is, but they underinvest in what they will need to do to be successful in the future. This is Professor Phil Kotler from the Kellogg School of Management, and he explains this concept of dual vision really well. He's the world's foremost authority on marketing. He's written more than 60 books, and here he is talking about looking through the microscope, improving what is. And here he is explaining what it means to look through the telescope. This is about creating what will be. It's about forgetting the past and reshaping your business to compete more effectively in the future. Now, here is the most important strategic decision you need to make. Everything in strategy starts by getting clear on who or what your ideal target customer is. And one more quote from Phil Kotler. There is only one winning strategy. You carefully define your target market and you direct a superior offering to that target market. Now, I mentioned earlier that I came back to live in New Zealand in 2020 after spending 12 years living in the USA and Canada. And this is a picture of my wife, Bianca, at a firing range in Los Angeles. And we were there because Bianca wanted to know what it felt like to fire a pistol. And that might sound odd to people who live in the USA, but we're both from New Zealand, and it's really rare for a member of the public to have ever fired a handgun. So we went to the firing range, we signed up for a beginner's class, and the range master, the guy in this picture, he said to Bianca, he said, you've got to aim for the bullseye in the center if you want to hit the target. And I thought to myself, yep, that's exactly the same secret for business strategy. So think of a shooting target or an archery target. You've got to aim for the bullseye at the center if you want to get a high score. And I learned a great lesson from my friend Doug Hall, and he used to head up the innovation team at Procter & Gamble, and they're one of the world's largest consumer goods companies. And Doug said, you've got to delight the few to attract the many. And Procter & Gamble's research on thousands of brands and companies found that you'll be far more likely to succeed if you target a specific type of customer right at the center of the bullseye, and you aim to delight just that type of customer. Now, yes, you can still sell to the customers in the outer rings if they want what you make and they're willing to give you money, but only where it doesn't distract you from your bullseye focus, and only where it doesn't force you to dilute or change your offering in any way. Most importantly, don't try to be all things to all people. You can't be all things to all people. Strategy requires trade-offs, and if you're not making trade-offs, then you don't have a strategy. Strategy means saying yes to some things and no to other things. It also means saying no to some types of customers and their demands. If you're saying yes to every type of customer, you don't really have a strategy. So what are the benefits of having a clearly defined target market audience? Well, first of all, your product and service offerings have more clarity and focus because you know who you're building it for. Your marketing communications are more effective because you know who you're talking to. And if you do it right, the target customer, they'll perceive you as the expert at meeting their needs because they can tell that this company understands me and that you've designed a product or service that is perfect for their needs. And they'll be far more likely to choose you over other vendors. So ask yourself, what type of customer sits right at the center of your bullseye? It's the sweet spot that you want to aim for. It's the type of customers where you're going to have a competitive advantage over your competitors. It doesn't mean you'll only sell to that type of customer, but you're going to design your business model to deliver excellence to that type of customer right in the middle of the bullseye. And once you are clear on who or what your target customer is, you choose a value discipline, which is based on what your target customer values the most. And it is a choice with trade-offs. And basically, there are 3 games you can play, and you need to get very clear on which game you are playing, and you need to make sure that you're playing that game to win, because these are one-way doors. So take a look at the column on the left, the column that says, what do your target customers value the most? Now, customers want all 3 of these things, But which one of the three in the left column is most important to your target customer? In the middle column, we've got the name of your value discipline. That's the game you're playing. And in the column on the right, I've got some examples of companies who are playing that game to win. And yes, these companies are USA centric, which is where I've done most of my work, but hopefully you get the picture. Now, each value discipline, it requires a different company structure, a different business model, different metrics and KPIs, a different culture. You even need to employ different types of people to make it work. So you need to make a clear decision about which value discipline you're going to specialize in, so that you're going to build a business model, a machine that delivers that value discipline in a truly excellent manner. And you commit to becoming truly excellent at that one value discipline, but good enough at the other two. So good enough means you match the industry standard. So you need to be good enough in two of them, but you invest your resources to develop true excellence in one of them. And this is a strategic decision. Strategy requires that you make trade-offs. So which one of these value disciplines will you choose? And from there, how will you design your business model? How will you design your culture? How will you build a machine that delivers your value discipline with unique excellence? Now, we won't have time to go into it today, but you also need to stake out a unique position in your industry. And there are many nuances here, but in simple terms, there's two broad ways you can do this. One, you position your company as being a leader in a category where you can create or own a category. Or two, you position your company as being meaningfully different in a niche that matters to your target customer. So that bowl on the left, that's where you're a commodity. You're squabbling with all the other fish for scraps of food. That's called a red ocean strategy. Your aim is to create a unique strategic position, a blue ocean space, a space where you can have all the food to yourself. And we'll cover this topic in more detail in a future webinar. Because I want to talk about your long-term strategic moves, your 3 to 5 year strategic moves, which is looking through the telescope toward the horizon. Now, in 2007, when Steve Jobs launched the iPhone, he used this quote from Canadian ice hockey legend Wayne Gretzky. Now, effective strategic leadership is about thinking and planning for the long term. Not just about responding to change or reacting to what your competitors are doing. It's about being proactive and creating the future. It's about creating what will be. And in order to choose those long-term strategic moves, you must analyze your industry to look for inflection points that are occurring or are likely to occur in your industry. That's where a significant change is about to occur. And we either make a good strategic decision and we go on to be more successful, or we make a poor decision or no decision at all, and we go into decline or out of business altogether. And I'm sure you can think of examples of a company that was once dominant in their industry, an inflection point occurred, and they failed to make a good strategic decision. They kept doing what made them successful in the past, but that was not the right strategy to be successful in the future. And as a result, their business went into decline or even bankruptcy. Now, companies who fail to perform a robust industry analysis, they fail to see the changing trends, they fail to spot the inflection points, and they get caught out. This is Professor Michael Porter from the Harvard Business School. There are lots of things you could do, but you can't do everything. You need to get very clear about what you are going to do and what you're not going to do. What you're going to get into, what you're going to get out of, what you're going to start doing, what you're going to stop doing. You can't do everything. Strategy is about making choices. Strategy is about making trade-offs. And continuity is critical. If you don't pursue a direction for 2 or 3 years, it's meaningless. We recommend you focus on 3 to 5 years. So I would ask you, what are your organization's long-term strategic moves? What are the 3 big moves that you need to make to position your company for future success that are going to help you to create a competitive advantage in your industry? If you don't know, you need to know. Now, remember this quote I showed you from Roger Martin at the beginning. Don't mistake non-choices for strategy. Because once you've chosen your long-term strategic moves, I put them through my strategy sniff test. And this is where I give my clients a hard time and I beat them up during their strategic planning sessions, because we take each strategic move and we ask this question: could someone, say one of your competitors, do the opposite of what you're planning to do here? And could that also be a valid strategy for them? Now, if doing the opposite would be stupid or nonsensical, it's not strategy. It's just a table stakes requirement for doing business in your industry. It's not strategy. And this is where many companies fail at strategic planning. Their strategies are full of generic fluff like, we're going to provide best-in-class customer service. And it's like, okay, so the opposite of that would be to provide terrible customer service. Could that be a valid strategy for a company in your industry? No, I don't think so. You see, many companies, they haven't actually made any strategic choices at all. A strategic move should help you to establish a competitive advantage in your industry. It should make it very clear what you're saying yes to and what you're saying no to. It's about making trade-offs. And if you're not making any trade-offs, well, you don't have a strategy. And if the opposite of your strategic move is stupid or nonsensical, well, I'm sorry to say it's not strategy, it's just table stakes. So here's an example. Costco, second largest retailer in the USA, they're about to open their first store in New Zealand. Now, Costco's value discipline is operational excellence. They are cost leaders. And here are their long-term strategic moves. Members only. Only members can shop at Costco. You pay a $60 annual fee, and 70% of Costco's profit comes from that fee, and they've got a 90% renewal rate. Now, the trade-off is not everyone can shop there. You can't just walk in off the street. Limited range. Costco has a very limited range of stock keeping units. They only have 4,000 SKUs versus 40,000 of a typical grocery store. Now, the trade-off there is that only the most common products are sold at Costco. And bulk outer packs only. Customers must buy in bulk. The store is the warehouse. Everything is on pallets in the store. There's no storeroom out the back. The trade-off is you can't buy individual items. You've got to show up with a vehicle to transport your purchases home. So these long-term strategic choices, they pass the sniff test. Could a competitor do the opposite of these moves, and could that be a valid strategy for them? Yes, in all three cases. In fact, that's what most of their competitors do. So once again, what are the three big moves that you need to make that are going to position you for future success and help you to create a competitive advantage? And if you don't know, you need to know. And if they don't pass the sniff test, if you're not willing to make trade-offs, well, I'm sorry to say you don't really have a strategy. And if your long-term strategic choices do pass the sniff test, now you can do your SWOT analysis. SWOT is an acronym for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's an assessment of your current reality, and your strengths and weaknesses are internal. They are things unique to your company. Opportunities and threats are external. They're things out there in the marketplace that you could take action on. Now, I've seen companies and consultants, they do a SWOT analysis at the start of a strategic planning process, and that's a huge mistake. You need context. You need to choose your long-term strategy first before you can do justice to a SWOT analysis. Only when you know what your long-term strategy is, do you have the right context to identify what strengths you can leverage to help you achieve this long-term strategy, what weaknesses you need to fix or improve to achieve your long-term strategy, what opportunities you should pursue or invest in right now to achieve your long-term strategy, and what threats could derail your plans that you need to reduce or mitigate. And you need to confront the brutal facts and be objective. I ask clients to imagine I'm an outside investor. I'm looking to invest in your company, and I'm going to perform a thorough due diligence. I'm going to audit your financials. I'm going to inspect your operations. I'm going to interview your staff. I'm going to interview your customers. I'm going to mystery shop your competitors. And let's say I do agree with your long-term strategic moves. What sort of SWOT analysis would I put together for your company? And I do this because many companies are too vague and wishy-washy, because you need to be really specific when you do a SWOT analysis. You use blunt, obvious 3 to 5 word statements and use language that an average teenager could understand. Now, many companies, they say things like our people, our brand, our culture, our strengths, but it's fluff. Is it really true? And how would you prove it to me? Again, this is another area where I give clients a hard time. I beat them up during their strategic planning sessions because I want them to confront the brutal facts and be objective. And once you've done your robust SWOT analysis, you're ready to choose your strategic projects or your big rocks. The big rocks are the things we're going to push forward in the short term. You might call them initiatives or priorities or OKRs. They're all essentially the same thing. I prefer the term strategic projects because they are strategic in nature. They are aligned to your 3 to 5 year strategic moves, and they must address one or more of the issues contained in your SWOT analysis. So strategic projects are the 3 big projects you're going to implement right here, right now in the short term. And once again, we need to focus. You choose 3 strategic projects, not 4, not 5, just 3. And anything that doesn't make the top 3 means, no, we're not going to work on that project at all right now. Strategic decision making is all about trade-offs and focus. And if you're not making trade-offs, well, you don't have a strategy. You focus on the 3 most important things and you say no to everything else. And your strategic plan is a living document. Now, this is just a highly simplified overview of the strategic planning cadence I'd recommend. And once a year, we spend 1 or 2 days with our clients for annual strategic planning. We conduct a thorough industry analysis. We update all the high-level strategic decisions to make sure that they make sense. And then we set aside 1 day every quarter for quarterly strategic reviews, where we refresh your plan every quarter to ensure that your strategic projects or big rocks will address the current reality and help you move in the direction of your long-term strategy. And finally, I've got a saying that successful business execution is 20% getting clear on what needs to be done and 80% following up to make sure it actually gets done. So having a good strategy is just 20% of the battle. The other 80% is making sure your strategy gets executed. And that's where you need a business execution system, a way of scoping your strategic project properly, a way of creating the right metrics or key performance indicators to drive success, a way of driving performance. You need managers who are trained to run effective meetings and trained to run or trained to hold people accountable the right way and trained how to coach and support your people the right way. And these are the topics I'm going to cover in our next webinar called Modern Management. And in that webinar, we're going to focus on your management team and show you how to set goals the right way and how to have those tough conversations about performance and how to make sure things are getting done while coaching and supporting your team to be more effective. So I'd like to invite you to join us for the rest of our 2022 webinar series. We're going to be covering how to execute your strategy, how to build a powerful culture and retain good people, how to make better decisions, how to bring more innovation into your business, how to navigate finance in times of inflation, and how to grow sales in uncertain times. And more events are going to come as well. So I'd like to thank you all very much for your time and attention today. And I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Logan Wedgwood, the CEO of Advisory.Works, who's going to talk about a couple of things you can do right now to help you create a winning strategy.